Thank you to my patrons. Your generosity and commitment to my work is astonishing. I sincerely appreciate it. These radical events still predate the Industrial Revolution before we ever started contributing to global warming. So you don't get to pawn it off on human decision-making unless, which is what some theists do, you blame Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, so we were banished to a fallen world. There you go. But to that I say, well, God would have chosen the world that we fell into, and God chose a world that's filled with earthcakes.
Earthcakes.
If only that's what it was filled with.
That would be if there was a God that actually did give a shit about us. That would be what we have. It's like, oh, look, great, earthcakes.
Earthcakes. Hey everybody, Magic Skeptic here, and don't worry, the video is about to begin. I just wanted to take a moment to make you aware of my Patreon, the link for which can be found in the description below. Sign up today for as little as £3 per month, and you can gain access to a plethora of perks and extras, including downloadable audio-only and ad-free versions of my podcast that you can listen to on the go. You can also have your question answered in a monthly video, and better still, depending on which tier you choose, you could even sit down for a Skype call with yours truly, Magic Skeptic. All that is available and much, much more. All you got to do is click the link in the description below. I hope to see you there.
If you just had the camera just solely on your Mickey, just wobbling about the place, as you're chatting away about, you know, the fucking the likelihood of, you know, an afterlife or some such thing, and there's just a fucking, you know, Mickey wobbling about the screen there. They'd be happy enough with that.
Oh, I'm tempted to put that as the intro, to be honest.
Well, if that doesn't hook listeners, well, I just don't know anymore. I have no business trying to fucking or partaking in podcasts, because I just don't understand what people want if that's the type of thing that doesn't hook their interest.
The world isn't as it used to be anymore if that's not appealing to the masses.
Yeah. Mother of God.
Hello everybody, and you're all most welcome to episode 1 of what I'm going to be calling Handy Chat. Shout out to my dad, who's appeared on the channel before. He came up with the title for the show. If you're curious, dear listener, what that means if you live outside of Ireland, handy chat is a colloquialism that's used in Ireland to refer to casual conversation. And I can't think of a better person to have that casual conversation with than one PJ from the channel Just the Tipp. Of course, the link to PJ's channel will be included in the description below. PJ, it's a pleasure to have you here today for the premiere episode, and could very well be the last episode of Handy Chat. How are you doing?
Fucking smashing, lad. How are you getting on?
Great. So PJ and I were just having a rather colourful conversation before I did that intro. You may or may not see it, because I'll have to decide whether or not the conversation in question will get me demonetized.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably easier now to fucking to highlight the things that won't get you demonetized now. I think, did they recently come out with a new bunch of them, like shit like video game violence? If there's violence in a video game now, that can't be, you can't have that in YouTube. I don't keep up with it really, but I just heard this in passing.
I've also heard that in passing, and so I can't make a qualified comment. What I will say is that if that's true, if it's true that video game violence gets demonetized, now I know, I shouldn't say if, because I do know for a fact, I'm a big fan of the Mortal Kombat franchise. It's my favourite video game of all time, as PJ well knows.
Fucking know.
I think you remarked one time, PJ, that I've played that game so much that there must be some kind of a tenet in the licensing agreement that means that I probably owe the game developer more money at this point.
Oh yeah, more money than you can afford.
Absolutely. So yeah, I am something of
ever be able to afford.
Yeah, I'm definitely something of a fanatic. But given the fact that I'm a fanatic of Mortal Kombat, I can tell you right now that some of my favorite streamers and YouTubers who upload Mortal Kombat content have to go to extraordinary lengths in order to have their video monetized. If you show what's affectionately referred to in the Mortal Kombat franchise as a fatality, which is a finishing move, which is usually hyper-violent. Granted, it's digitized graphics, but it's hyper-violent. And if you show that, the video reliably gets demonetized. And sometimes even a mere mention of Mortal Kombat gets a video demonetized. So that probably means this video is going to get demonetized now. So yeah, video game violence definitely gets demonetized. I know that's not a new thing. I think they've just become more strict on it lately, reading between the lines. Again, I haven't read into this topic in detail, PJ, so I'm not best placed to comment on it, but it's just, it definitely is frustrating because there's people who upload videos. I mean, videos are something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this podcast, I hope, the Syrian, the Turkey-Syria earthquake fiasco and tragedy there. I mean, all of the news channels who will presumably upload harrowing footage of that, those videos probably, I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would imagine those videos won't be demonetized, and that depicts very real tragedy. But goodness gracious me, we could never depict fantasy violence. That's beyond the pale. I just don't understand.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it's just, you know, fucking the world is becoming more and more of, you know, we've all heard of like the nanny state. Well, it's kind of like a nanny world now. Like, you know, we have to be what's the word I'm looking for? Insulated from everything that, you know, that could potentially upset us or upset someone in some way. It's a bit sickening.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is an example of that. Maybe I've got the wrong end of the stick here, but I don't know. To me, it's just about advertisers, really. YouTube is demonetizing these videos. It's not removing them. I've never heard of a Mortal Kombat video being removed from YouTube.
Right.
What I've heard plenty of is them getting demonetized. And I guess it makes sense that a brand doesn't want to be associated with hyperviolence. But then, I don't know, man, it still seems like a double standard. I mean, I'm a big fan of UFC. I mean, maybe big fan is a strong phrase, but I'm certainly a fan of UFC. And
you enjoy it when it's on.
Yeah, exactly. And every brand worth their salt wants their product advertised during a live event when Conor McGregor is in the octagon. You know, like Red Bull wants their product advertised, Coca-Cola wants their product advertised, and at a UFC event, real people are beating the living shit out of each other, like real world violence. So if you want your brand there, it just begs the question, why would Coca-Cola have an issue with their ad for their soft drink, for their poison, which also kills people, by the way? Why would they take issue with having their ad before a video game which depicts fantasy violence, make-believe, and mythology? I don't know, man. Look, maybe some of our listeners here have a better understanding of this topic than I do, and feel free to jump into the comment section below and enlighten me, dear listener. Again, I have said at the start that I'm not best placed to comment on this topic, but such is the nature of Handy Chat. Do not come to watch the Handy Chat series of videos, which may just end up being a sample size of one video, I might add. It'll depend on how this goes. In other words, it'll depend on how successful this video is. But do not come to this series, should it continue, for an informed opinion. If you want an informed opinion, go and watch my other episodes. Go and watch my other entries, my most annoying religious people or a magician's thoughts. Those are well researched, and I stand by the things I say there. I do not stand by anything that's going to be said in this conversation.
If you want to hear two lads speaking out their collective arse, well, fucking, you've come to the right place. Other than that, get your bag and baggage and fuck on.
I like the sound of that, PJ. Our collective arse. I can't quite put my finger on it or in it.
Nor would you want to. Nor would you want to. Well, I should hope you wouldn't want to.
Yeah. In any case, on that note, dear listener, it is important, if you enjoyed this casual conversation between PJ and I, and if you want more of this kind of content, now perhaps it's a bit premature to decide whether or not you've enjoyed this conversation yet, but if you are enjoying it and if you continue to enjoy it, it's this video, it's more important than ever that you smash the like button. And I'm not doing that as a kind of a cheap algorithmic trick to get you to do my work for me to help this video be successful in the algorithm. That's not the goal. I simply want you to smash the like button for this video to indicate to me that you've enjoyed it. Because if this video doesn't get a good reception, if it doesn't get many likes, if it doesn't get many views, and if it doesn't get many comments, I may desist with this series. This is just a test, really and truly, guys. I want to do a more of a casual podcast entry, a more of a casual conversational approach for at least one series of videos. All of my content is very, carefully curated. And it's very carefully edited, and it's
this is a complete and utter departure from that.
Exactly right. PJ gets it. This is a complete and utter departure from that. This is where I want to let my hair down. I debated wearing my dressing gown for this conversation to just convey the casual nature of it. But my fiance Becky told me that I would look a shambles if I wore my dressing gown. So I followed her advice, PJ. What do you think? Was that good advice?
Your fiancé told you that you were going to be preemptively divorced had you followed through on that.
A handy divorce. Divorce after some handy chat. Isn't that always the way?
Indeed. That a handy chat often leads to a handy divorce. But in any case...
Oh, goodness. In any case, PJ, in the spirit of handy chat, tell me, what has been going on in your life recently? I know you mentioned recently that you had some complaints and some things that you wanted to get off your chest.
Well, I'll put it to you this way, lad. If I didn't have shit to complain about, I would be a fucking mute.
Yes. Or you'd be dead.
Or dead,
Dead people don't complain, as far as I'm aware.
No, but that'd be too easy, you see. You can't suffer when you're dead, so...
Yeah.
Not
unless the theists are right. According to them, that's when the suffering begins.
Huh.
That's what Christopher Hitchens said. He talks... Christopher Hitchens, he's my idol, and as... any long-term viewer of my channel will know that.
Never heard of him.
But he would talk about the God of the Bible, and his thesis about the God of the Bible would include things like, this power, this all-powerful being is unalterable, unelected, and irremovable, right? Just this continuously present, all-seeing eye in the sky. He called it the essence of dictatorship. He said that if it's true, we're basically living in something akin to a divine North Korea. And then he finished by saying, but at least you can fucking die and leave North Korea. But if the Christians are right, or the Muslims are right, or what have you, if the Abrahamic faiths are right, the fun is only just beginning when you're on your deathbed. That's when you really become God's plaything, assuming you get sent to hell,
Yeah, but, is it fucking like you're gonna know this because this is your bread and butter, but I'm struggling now. But is it Hinduism that's basically like you've got all these fucking cycles of reincarnation, and the end goal of all of them is to escape the cycle of reincarnation. So just to fucking die, essentially.
I know less about Hinduism. What you have said sounds very similar to Buddhism. Certain schools of thought in Buddhism. Yeah, the end goal is to escape the wheel of suffering, the wheel of samsara, as it is known, and to achieve what's called an ultimate death. Buddhism has a completely different end goal. It's fascinating when you compare Buddhism with the Abrahamic faiths. The Abrahamic faiths have this absolute fascination and obsession with surviving death, with going on to live forever and living in paradise for eternity. Yeah. The Buddhist faith views eternity as torturous. They're trying to escape the infinite cycle of rebirth. They view death as its own reward. And now, when I say they, obviously there's going to be differences of opinion. Like any religion, you can't paint everybody with the one brush, and there's going to be nuances and different sects and different denominations.
Subsets of the belief that have a different perspective on it.
Precisely. But yes, there's definitely a certain subsection of the Buddhist community that views death as a beautiful thing. And you know what? I can't help but agree with them. I think death sounds just fine. I'm not saying I want to die now. I'm interested in exploring life, but you know, I'm lucky enough to have a life that's worth living. I wouldn't dare say that for others. That really sickens me, by the way, when people say, you know, oh, life is precious, you should want to continue to live. Well, that's fine for you, buddy, but you don't get to make that decision for somebody else. I'm a big believer. Yeah. I'm a big believer in euthanasia, you know?
Yeah, life can be precious.
Yeah.
It's indeed. Not inherently fucking precious.
Yeah.
Like, you can be born from the word fucking go with all manner of shit wrong with you, and it's just fucking agony.
Yeah.
So, you know, fuck off telling that person it's precious.
Yeah. It's the same thing that... This is going to get very dark very quickly, but, you know... what?
You know what I think is hilarious? Like...
What?
Like, fucking... This is, you know, a series called Handy Chat, and we've just gotten into very dark fucking waters very quickly.
It was always going to happen, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was always inevitable.
Yeah, but the one thing that surprised me a little bit even was just how quickly we got to it. Like, it didn't take any amount of time, and we're already talking about, you know, utter despair and kind of talking about, you know, how death is its own fucking reward, isn't it? Yeah, Christ almighty. Wish I was fucking dead.
It's one of the things that frustrates me when people say that those who commit suicide are selfish.
Yeah, and fuck off.
Yeah, I find that to be objectionable. Now, it could be.
You could flip that. You could flip that statement on its head straight away, and it's kind of like, hang on now, are you not selfish for putting the expectation on someone who doesn't want to live to survive for your good, like, you know, for your benefit,
to spare you pain.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. It could be selfish. I mean, if somebody were to end their own life and in their note they say something like, I ended my own life because I just wanted to hurt the people who loved me, that would obviously be selfish. But if somebody, I think almost by definition, if somebody considers themselves a burden, rightly or wrongly, if they consider themselves a hassle, and they think that the world would, and they've honestly reasoned themselves to a place, rightly or wrongly, they've honestly reasoned themselves to a place where they think that they are literally a burden on everybody else, and that their absence from this world would create a net positive outcome. If somebody genuinely believes that, if that's their honest psychological disposition, well, then ending their own life from their own psychological perspective is not an act of selfishness. If anything, it's an act of selflessness, right? And so, I think we really need to get away from this assumption that ending one's life is a selfish thing. I think, like anything, it depends on the situation. Obviously, just to be clear, I would prefer that people didn't end their own lives, because I think there's very many cases where people did just that when they hadn't explored alternatives, when there were possibilities, where there were, you know, potential pathways out of whatever ailed them, and those things weren't explored thoroughly enough. And, you know, look, it's a very tragic thing, but yeah, it does frustrate me when people are quick to judge. I guess to just wrap a neat bow around this particular topic, all I would say is that we need to judge each situation individually. That's all I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I had an uncle who took his own life some couple of years ago, and thankfully now I haven't crossed paths with anyone who tried to frame that as an act of selfishness. Otherwise, that person would be getting a very rapid dig into the teeth. You know, fucking, who are you to say, you know what someone's actions constitute once, you know, you don't understand the fucking the depth of the psychological torment this person's in. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Becky and I were watching The Pacific, that HBO World War II drama, And it's phenomenal, by the way. I had never seen it. I had seen Band of Brothers and loved it. And many people had recommended that I watch the Pacific. But there's a scene in the Pacific where one of the soldiers on one of the Japanese islands, one of the American soldiers, and the depravity, the misery and the suffering that these soldiers endured. There's a scene where one of the soldiers kills himself.
Yeah.
And I watched it. It's a harrowing scene. It's very, very hard to watch. But if somebody looks at that, now this is just a drama, but we know that this happened in the real world. We know that this happens in the real world, right? It's not rosy in the garden everywhere on planet Earth right now. And if somebody is in that scenario or a scenario like it, and they decide, you know what, this just isn't worth it. I mean, I totally get that. I mean, like, you can't look at that and tell me, oh, no, you definitely should have continued living. How dare you? Like, what? What are you talking about? What are you joking me? You know, I feel sometimes these conversations, I mean, we're just talking about competing intuitions. And my intuition tells me loud and clear that a soldier on the Japanese islands in the Second World War who's had enough and who could get shot any minute anyway, and whose continued existence means that they're just going to continue to live with their feet rotting off because of, you know, being exposed to water for too long, and they might be suffering from dysentery, and their every waking moment, their every breath is another second of agony. My intuition tells me quite strongly that if that person doesn't want to be alive anymore, that's fair enough. But the more obvious examples include things like people being diagnosed with terminal illnesses. You know, if you don't want to be alive because you get diagnosed with a terminal illness, then fair enough, man. Like, fair enough. Like, that's totally reasonable as far as I'm concerned. I think that was something that was at the epicenter of the Breaking Bad TV show with Walter White. Now, he doesn't go to get euthanized, but there is a conversation in the first season of that show where he thinks about not going for the chemotherapy because he doesn't want to prolong the agony. He would rather have a shorter existence where he's not sick from the drugs and the chemo and the radiation poisoning.
Go out with some dignity.
Exactly. And I think there's a similar principle at play there, you know. And it's a principle that I'm sympathetic to. And, you know, if you're not sympathetic to it, dear listener, and you have a completely different intuition, fair enough. It's not like I can argue that my intuition is factually correct and better than yours. We just have competing intuitions. Remember, PJ, and as you're aware, dear listener, I'm an anti-realist, a moral anti-realist. I'm not convinced that there's any moral facts to be known. And so really all we're talking about here is competing intuitions. But I have to say, I'm always shocked by people who have the alternative intuition that somebody in such a dire scenario ought continue living despite their suffering. And so, yeah, I don't know, for what it's worth, those are my thoughts. What do you think, PJ?
I agree. Yeah. Fucking hell. I'm still just can't get over how, like, you know, we decided to have a casual conversation that was going to be a departure from stuff that could be considered philosophical or you know.
I never said that. Well, handy chat is just let the conversation go where it wants to go, and it went this direction, and that's fair enough. That's fine by me.
Straight to suicide. So, you know, make of that what you will, dear listener. Make of that what you will.
So let's get back to more casual matters then. So what's been going on in your life of late?
I've been thinking about killing myself.
And for some reason, I have a stronger urge to do it now.
I was just, you know, I was actually just testing the water to see how you'd feel about it were I to follow through on it. But now that we've cleared that up.
Now that you've received a strong endorsement from Magic Skeptic.
Yeah. I can tell you now, dear listener, this will be the one and only episode in this series. At least with me as a guest.
That features you, yeah. So, all right, lad, this was going to be the only episode you were in anyway. I wasn't planning on having you back.
Oh, grand, yeah. For luck. Oh, Christ. I wasn't planning on having myself back.
Oh, man. Always cheery with PJ.
Life is pain.
Life is definitely pain. Oh, man. So anyway, about that earthquake in Syria, Turkey.
Fucking hell.
I swear I'm not laughing at it. But I just planned on segueing to it at some point, and now it just seems like an opportune moment.
Yes. As a small caveat, like, people that know me in, like, reality, like, you're not one of these people, because I feel like we're on the one page with, insofar as this kind of stuff is concerned. I think anyone who's, you know, fucking at least had some kind of a curiosity about philosophy and about, you know, kind of critical thinking and fucking deep thought in any way, shape, or form is much more amenable to kind of talking about like the darker stuff in life. But however, I know so many people, like, be they work colleagues, and, you know, some people that I would call friends, just in a more, like, you know, I see them more in my personal life and stuff like that. But an awful lot of people that I cross paths with on a day-to-day basis, they would look at me as being, you know, quite a cynical, pessimistic person. And more often than not, I don't really give a shit. Like, I'm like, you know, your opinion doesn't really fucking come up on my radar, so whatever. But, you know, the odd time, some days it touches a nerve, and I'm kind of like, hang on a fucking second now. I mean, are we experiencing the same fucking reality? Like, Christ almighty, you've the fucking gumption to call me fucking pessimistic. And sure, like, just look at what's going on in the fucking world, you know, just because you're fucking grand, you know, and I start looking at reality and reading between the fucking lines, I get fucking called a pessimist. Fuck off. Like, I mean, and that's, I think that's just because you brought up the whole Syria thing. I mean, you know, things weren't bad enough in fucking Syria, but the Lord God himself decreed that, well, fuck you now, you need an earthquake down on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ almighty.
Yeah, last I checked, and this was a couple of days ago, so this number has almost certainly gone up. And by the time this podcast goes live, this number will definitely have risen even further. But the last I checked, the death toll is at 28,000.
Yeah, it certainly won't drop anyway.
No. If only reality did that, huh?
Yeah. If only other people other than our Lord could rise from the dead.
How confusing would that be if you are watching the news? Breaking news, 28,000 dead. Then you read the news the next day. Breaking news, 18,000 dead. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. Some of those dead, they rose again. So, you know, they're all right.
They're okay.
Like our Lord, they just kind of they were dead for a while, but they came around.
Yeah, they were talked back into coming back here to suffer some more. You know.
Yeah. Yes, they got to the other side, and you know, God decreed, you haven't suffered enough, so I'm going to send you back to do some more.
Man, it is tragic. I swear. I got upset the other night. I didn't expect this to happen, but I don't watch the news a whole pile, and I pay a price for that. I'm not as informed politically and socially as some other people are. But I made a very conscious decision a number of years back to stop watching the news as much as I was watching it, because it takes a toll on your psychology.
Oh, it's misery. It's just misery, like.
Yeah.
It's basically your nightly misery update.
Yeah,
is what it is.
Indeed. And if it's not a misery update, it's a vacuousness update, because they're telling you what the Kardashians are up to, or something completely inane, like which man put the ball in the net. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. PJ and I are not big fans of sports. So there you go, dear listener. I've just divided my audience there. No, on a serious note, I actually do really sincerely appreciate the athleticism and the skill that's involved in those sports. What I object to is that it has to appear in the nightly news, you know.
It baffles me. I don't get it. Like, it feels to me like I'm missing something. Like, there's some part of it that, requires a sense that I simply do not possess. I don't understand it. Like, okay, this fella, he's kicked the ball goes into the net, everyone loses their fucking mind.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, to me, it's like watching a fella balancing a spoon on his nose. the stakes are the same. What's going to happen? Either the spoon is going to fall off his nose, or it won't. Who gives a shit? I just don't get it. My mind is boggled.
I just find it.
Yeah.
Sorry, PJ. Go ahead. You hadn't finished your thought.
That's all I was going to do was ramble on about how at a complete and utter fucking loss I am when it comes to any of that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it mildly insulting. On the news the other night, it's, 28,000 people have died in Syria, Turkey, and they're talking about what aid is being sent and why it all is just so terrible and miserable, and they're interviewing people who've lost their entire families.
Yeah, in
other news, man puts ball in net. And it's just, I find that actually I find the juxtaposition to be quite gross, actually.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm reading into it too much, and maybe I'm a bit too sensitive, and I'll no doubt have my critics in the comments section below. But fine, fine. I'm just honestly relaying my feelings and my sentiments. I find it gross that that's the news cycle, But yeah, man, Jesus Christ, it's such an awful, awful tragedy. It's just so bloody grim. As I said, I got upset the other night. I put on the news because it was just the thumbnail caught my eye, and I clicked in, and Becky and I were sat there, and there was this man sat on top of a pile of rubble calling his wife's name and crying and trying to pick up boulders that were too heavy for any man to lift. And it just broke me, PJ. It just floored me. Oh my God, those poor people. And you're right. I mean, you went straight to the God question. I mean, just to be clear, I'm on record on my channel, and I stand by this claim. I don't think the problem of evil is actually the strongest argument. I don't think it's even a particularly good argument against the existence of a God. The only thing it's good at doing is demonstrating the non-existence of a good God.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because it could just be the case that there's a God who's an evil son of a bitch. A sadist in the sky who just loves watching us squirm underneath the boulders as we get crushed alive or suffocate or succumb to the cold. And how awful is this? Syria, Turkey is having unusually cold weather. So the people trapped in the rubble had even a lesser, if they survived the collapsing buildings, they had even a lesser chance of surviving because the cold was going to kill them over the night. Right?
Yeah.
It's just, oh man, I
must qualify that there because I let out a little laugh there. And that by no means is a laugh that I'm not laughing at the expense of those poor people. But
no, I know exactly why you were laughing.
Yeah, it's just like, Jesus Christ Almighty, was it not bad enough?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when things get so dire, your brain goes to that place where you start kind of laughing because you just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's absolutely appalling, and it really does shed a light on theistic convictions. And I mean, really, if there is a creator, if there is a designer who put all of this together, some fucking design, huh? I mean, plate tectonics and freezing cold temperatures in order to eliminate the maximal number of people that you could eliminate in this particular disaster. And this is just one of however many dozen disasters we'll have this year, whether it be tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes, whatever it'll be, or disease, cancers, and various other ailments and maladies of the body that will wipe out millions on the global stage. And yet there are people who will say that there's an all-loving designer who put all of this here, and we are at the epicenter of his focus and attention, and he created everything, and he loves us all. But then this kind of stuff happens. I mean, religious people will try and get out of jail free on this.
Yeah, we're kind of like the cosmic battered wife, really. You know,
that's actually a really good analogy. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome where you have to fall in love with your captor.
Yeah,
because that's the only way you can justify your continued existence. I know he loves me though.
He loves me really, even though he gave me cancer in my arse. But no, he really, like, he only did that now because he's very, very, very much in love with me. Yeah,
he cares about me a lot. He gave me a terminal illness, but I know he still loves me. And then he made the plates beneath the earth move, the tectonic plates, such that my house collapsed on top of me. And he still loves me. And then he caused the temperatures to plummet to sub-zero. And then I froze to death. But in my final moments, I still remembered that he loved me.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Seriously, what are you supposed to say to that? Like, theists will try and get out of jail free in this, and they'll say, oh, you know, evil is caused by human beings because we make bad choices. Well, sorry, buddy, but we don't cause the plates to move. We don't cause the problems with plate tectonics. And to the extent that you could argue that global warming plays a role in radical weather events and natural disasters or what have you, and on that note, I don't think there's any connection between global warming and plate tectonics. That's just a feature of our physical geography. But look, let's extend an olive branch. Let's imagine we play some hand or partner through global warming. Fine. These radical events still predate the Industrial Revolution before we ever started contributing to global warming. So you don't get to pawn it off on human decision making unless, which is what some theists do, you blame Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, so we were banished to a fallen world. There you go. But to that I say, well, God would have chosen the world that we fell into, and God chose a world that's filled with earthcakes.
Earthcakes.
If only that's what it was filled with.
That would be if there was a God that actually did give a shit about us. That would be what we have. It's like, oh, look, great, earthcakes.
See,
happens?
handy chat.
The ground opens.
Handy chat.
Some baked goods fly out for everyone to fucking feast upon, and it's all lovely.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't that the fucking reality that we occupy? Huh?
That's one. I gotta put that on a t-shirt and sell it as merch.
Oh yeah.
Damn you, God, for all those earthcakes. You heard it here first, dear listener. Good old earthcakes. But yeah, in any case, I digress. If God is, sending Adam and Eve to a fallen world because of their sin, you don't get to blame all of the natural disasters on Adam and Eve, because God still chose the kind of world that he would banish Adam and Eve to. And God banished us to a world with earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, cancers, and all sorts of horrendous creatures. Stephen Fry has that brilliant interview on the TV show with the late and great Gay Byrne in Ireland.
Meaning of Life.
The Meaning of Life was the name of the show, and Stephen Fry, when he's asked about what he would say to God if he meets God at the pearly gates, says, bone cancer in children? What's all that about? And he talks about this particular, I don't know if it's an insect or is it a parasite or what exactly classification it would fall under.
Yeah,
but it eats outward from inside the eye.
Yeah.
It burrows into the eyes of children and eats outward from the inside. And Stephen Fry says and postulates that if there is an all-powerful God who created all of this, he could have easily have created the world that didn't include that one specific thing. Like, why is that part of the creation? And you don't get to blame it on Adam and Eve because they didn't choose the kind of world we fell into. God chooses that. You can't blame the recipient of the punishment for the punishment that the torturer chooses to implement. That to me is the equivalent of me saying to my child, now, if you misbehave, I'm going to chop off your fingers. Okay? Yeah. If you misbehave, I'm going to chop off your fingers. So don't misbehave. And then the child misbehaves. And so I, as the parent, then get the bolt cutters or pliers out and start pulling fingers from my 5-year-old, for example. I don't have a child, but probably good I don't, given the fact that I'm jumping to these kinds of explanations. But in any case, it would be the equivalent of that, and then it would be like me blaming the child. Well, they knew that they were going to have their fingers removed if they misbehaved, so their fingers being removed is their own fault. No, clearly you, as the punisher, have the ball is in your court, right? What punishment you choose to implement is your responsibility. So you don't get to blame that on Adam and Eve. You don't get to blame the fallen world on Adam and Eve. You blame it on the God who chose the world we fell into. So it seems to me, no matter what way you cut it, if you want to try and blame the world's evil on us, it's a fool's errand. And the natural evil you certainly can't blame on us, because even if you want to use the global warming, pedantic global warming explanation, I think it's a really weak explanation for tagging all of the natural evils onto human beings. But even if you tried it, there are natural evils that befell humanity before the Industrial Revolution ever happened. So, no matter what way you cut it, God is responsible if there is one. And again, I'm not a big proponent of the problem of evil. I don't think the problem of evil is a good argument against the existence of a God. I think the only thing it's a good argument against is the existence of a loving God. I think it's quite clear, as Stephen Fry put it, that if there is a God in control over this universe, that God is quite clearly, to quote Stephen Fry, a maniac.
It is very plausible that God might exist, but he is in fact a bollocks. So there
quite, yeah. And if the Syria Turkey earthquake if the Syria-Turkey earthquake doesn't demonstrate that, then I don't know what will. The other thing theists do, which is just crazy to me, some of them, this is the preferred Catholic approach. They deny that evil exists altogether. So then there isn't a problem of evil, because there's no such thing as evil.
Oh, I suppose that's handy. So when you're shafting a small child.
Oh my God, yeah. Jesus Christ. It's just, do you know what they say? Do you know what they actually say? And this dates all the way back to Augustine, who's one of the godfathers of the church. And in his Theodicy, he just denied the existence of evil. He said that evil is merely the privation of good. So he uses the analogy of light and dark. So darkness isn't an entity that exists in and of itself. Darkness, it's the absence of light. And so that's what they say about evil. Right. Evil is merely the absence of goodness. And yeah, one can't help but wonder if that would be a comforting thought for a mother who's being led into a gas chamber with their child in their arms during the Holocaust. Hey, listen, love, it's okay. What's happening to you isn't evil. This is merely the absence of goodness. So, have heart, my love. Don't make me sick. Don't make me sick. It's just revolting. What a despicable thing to say. And the most silly thing about that explanation is that it can just be easily reversed. Why can't I just say that goodness is the absence of evil, and that evil is the thing that exists? It's goodness that doesn't. It's trivially easy to produce a mirror argument, and where does that get us to? It's just, it's just pathetic.
That makes a whole hell of a lot more sense to me, because it would seem like the longer I live, the more I'm certain that
evil is the status quo.
Yeah. Just even saying fucking day-to-day life with regards to I think about things that I want, say I've just to keep myself sane and to give myself some kind of an arbitrary goal. I started building a project car 12 months ago, and I'm still tipping away at that now, but not to get into that because I've done podcasts with Ducky and stuff chatting about all that shit.
Shout out to Ducky.
Yeah, you big dickhead. But
you big bollocks.
No, that's not to suggest now that he has a big bollocks.
Oh God, no! Oh no, it's very small.
Oh Christ, no! You can hardly even call it a bollocks.
He's a duck. Yeah. Ducks don't have big anything.
But what was I going to say?
Something about the car.
Oh yeah. Well, just kind of so. Yeah, the reason I mentioned the car is kind of that's a kind of a thing just to psychologically give me something to aim towards.
Yeah.
The finished product, the car in and of itself, whilst I like it and I'll be oh, this thing is cool, it's more the thing to pursue, or the thing to kind of just work towards, that does me psychological good. Financial bad, but fucking psychological good. So fucking the thing in and of itself is kind of irrelevant, which is what I'm making a Hames of saying is basically I don't actually really want that much, but the older I get, I find the only thing I want is the absence of hassle. Like the absence of bullshit and fucking everyday torment. Now look, we've just spoke about a fucking terrible tragedy, and thankfully I've not had to endure anything like that, and hopefully I never will, but just in a kind of a mundane sense, like you can have this almost feels a bit gross now to be talking about this just after the fucking horror that we've just we've just spoke about, but yeah, just stuff like the day-to-day grind, like fucking we always talk about how nice it would be to escape all of that and escape the mundane, escape monotony and fucking all of that shit, but like that's kind of what I find, like, that's the only thing that I want out of life moving forward, is just the bad stuff to go away. I don't even want pleasure, I just want a little less pain.
Yeah, I fully get your comment about how it might feel gross talking about our own trials and tribulations after discussing something as horrendous as what's going on in Syria and Turkey. But, such is life. I mean, I don't know a way around that. I mean, it's a tricky one. And, maybe what we've stumbled across here is something that might be an olive branch for understanding why there's sports in the news, to bring the conversation kind of full circle in a way. Maybe it's perfectly reasonable and okay that football follows the earthquake announcement, because I mean, what else are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just sit there and reflect? Yeah, exactly. Sit there and reflect on the unpleasantness of the world, or should we distract ourselves? And maybe that's all football is, and undoubtedly that is what it is. And your car and your project car is a distraction. My YouTube channel, my philosophical endeavors, they're a huge distraction, and I value them for that reason. Because you're right, you do need a distraction in this world, and if you don't have the distraction, you could just you just go mad. You just go mad. I mean, this is the reason why I stopped watching the news in the first place. I'm never happier than when I'm, 2 or 3 hours into a Mortal Kombat session with my mates playing competitive games. I'm never happier than when I'm sat here having conversations like this with people like you, PJ, or when I'm editing and uploading and just above all else distracted. Because if you're not distracted, your mind just reliably, I mean, at least my mind reliably becomes unhinged, because all of the negative stuff becomes more pronounced. And like I said, the other night when I watched the news about the earthquake, I got upset watching this guy crying out for his wife in the rubble, who was curiously silent, shall I say. And it just absolutely broke my heart. And afterwards, I went on and played Mortal Kombat for a couple of hours with my mates on the PlayStation Network, because I just needed the distraction. And so, yeah, I totally get and I totally sympathize with your point, PJ, about feeling like it's a bit icky or a bit distasteful, really, to talk about the mundane matters in our life after a disaster like what happened in Syria and Turkey. But I think it's just the nature of the beast. What other option have we got? Other than, like, if you want to just continue wallowing in that misery, fine, but that's not going to be conducive to living a good life, whatever a good life is. And so, yeah, I just think it is the nature of the beast. And like I said, I think we might have actually stumbled across a reason why people care so much about sports and football and things. I will say, though, and this is the last comment I'll make on that, just to put in a little bit of a defense for myself about calling it disgusting earlier. At least I recognize that the things that distract me are just that. They are distractions. I don't go around pretending that my adoration and love for the Mortal Kombat franchise is something that other people should be interested in. I don't go around pretending that my interest in Mortal Kombat is the be-all and the end-all, and I don't go around believing that it deserves a place in the nightly news. Now, clearly, sports is more popular on the world stage, and at the end of the day, the market is the driver for these things. Fine. But that doesn't mean that sports matters in the objective sense. It doesn't mean I should care about it. And that's one of the things that really pisses me off. I'm sure you'll be the same, PJ. But when you tell people, I get this in school all the time, the kids ask me, they'll just walk up and say, oh, who are you supporting in the game, sir? And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? The game? What game? Is somebody about to play some chess? You know, now I know they're talking about football, but I just pretend to be
starring Michael Douglas.
Exactly. I just pretend to be stupid just to annoy them. They get really pissed off with it. They're not socially advanced yet. They're not socially advanced enough yet to figure out that I'm taking the piss out of them. You know, that kind of way that you can screw around with fucking children and frustrate them. It's funny. But yeah, they then usually follow up when I say I'm not interested in sports. They're like, what? That's weird. What do you mean you're not interested in sports? That's the thing that I find objectionable, you know. So anyway, yeah, I've said lots there. Feel free to respond.
Yeah, like say, up until recently enough, I was living with two fellas, and since I now live with one, the other fella has gone down the road of family life, so he's living with his child and recently born, or yeah, his recently born child and girlfriend now. So, but up until recently, the two lads were in the house, and the two of them are mad into their football, and it just used to baffle the fucking life out of me. Because I think one lad supported Liverpool, the other lad supported United, and like the screaming and the roaring out of them, and I wouldn't mind even, well, like, but they're not even like attached to either of those teams by any kind of idea of nationalism or anything like that. These are two teams from like a foreign country, from two lads who in any other context would probably say, you know, fuck the English, because they're typical they're typical Irish lads. But in the context of this game of ball, they're allowed to dictate their psychological well-being. Yeah. So whichever team, if these two teams were facing off against each other and one team were to lose, say one guy's team as opposed to the other guy's team would lose, whoever lost that now would be going around in like a very visible, very perceivable ball of misery as a result of it. And I'm just there looking at them, it's like just even pragmatically, why do you attach your fucking emotional or psychological well-being to this fucking team that has absolutely nothing got to do with you on any given level? And even the language that they use to talk about this, it's like, oh, we gave you a right fucking trashing the other night. Did ye now? You were out there as well participating in said trashing, were you?
Have you ever watched that Mitchell and Webb look?
I have, yeah.
They did a bit on this, which was very funny, and they said exactly the same thing as you. They're like, people using these pronouns, we, as though they were involved, and then... Yeah,
maybe this observation is derivative of having seen that at some point in time, but...
Yeah, Webb then responds, and he says, oh, because, you know, we did an amazing job defeating the Nazis.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I just decided that because I like Indiana Jones that I was in the film, and so I defeated the Nazis with Harrison Ford because it's a film I like, and so I'm just going to describe it as we defeated the Nazis because I like Harrison Ford defeating the Nazis.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, this ability that they have funny. To vicariously fucking live through these fucking these fucking vapid bimbos kicking ball on the telly. I'll never be able to fucking get my mind around it. Like, and even like, say, I've used an example here now of like a fucking you know, lads in Ireland following these English teams that have fuck all got to do with them. I still don't understand it when it's like homegrown teams like in our national sport, hurling. I couldn't give a fuck. Like say you and I are both from Cashel in Tipperary. Well, I'm from a village just outside it.
Hurling, just for our international listeners, just so they're aware, hurling is the national sport of the country. It involves using a stick. Think of it like a baseball bat, but it's just got a wider end, basically. One end is close, almost like a small version of a tennis racket. They hit a ball. They hit a ball around the pitch and try to score goals. Blah blah blah. But yeah, it's quite a rough sport. It's a full contact sport, and that's what PJ is talking about. Just for our international listeners.
Yeah. So even like you've got that over here, and you've got like people, they attach themselves with kind of mental constructs like nationalism and stuff like that, and it's through that then that they feel some kind of connection to this team and how the team performs. So that's completely absent with the whole football thing for Irish anyway, but somehow they managed to attach themselves to it in absence of it. But even when it's present, say the whole hurling thing now, like that's a very big thing over here once you're in Ireland, and like we're both men from Tipperary, so lots of people come at me now because I'm down in Cork. So I'm a Tipperary man living in County Cork. So even today now in work, our hurling team in Tipperary, I think did they win a match against Kilkenny or something?
Oh God, you're asking the wrong man. I don't know and I don't care.
Nor I. But apparently some such thing happened like that, and there was people coming up to me in work today going, "Oh, you had a great win today," and I'd stop there. I'll stop you there, and they're like, "What?" I couldn't give a bollocks. And I just walk away, just pure like, that means nothing to me. I couldn't give a shit. Yeah. Like, just, and then sometimes people, they kind of take issue with that because they're obviously very invested in their team, and they can't understand why I'm not invested in mine. I'm like, am I personally any better off for the Tipperary hurling team having won something? If Tipperary wins a game of hurling against some other county, does a tenner extra appear in my bank account? It's like, no, then I don't give a shit. Fuck off. I don't care.
Yeah, it's that assumptive attitude that I have a problem with. That irritates me. Yeah, I mean, if I decide, for example, that a very popular Irish actor, Colin Farrell, for example, let's imagine he wins he is nominated to win the best actor this year for The Banshees of Inisherin, which is a great film, by the way. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have. Great film.
We might have a chat about that as well. But he's fantastic in it. And let's imagine he wins. That would be like me walking up to, you know what? Let's change it to somebody else. Let's imagine there's a British actor, just to make it easier, right? Let's imagine there's a British actor who's nominated. Now, I can't remember if there is, in fact, a British actor nominated this year, but let's just assume British actor X is nominated to win an Oscar, right? I then go into work. I live in England, and I go into my British colleagues after this English actor wins, and I say, "Oh, you had a great win last night." And they're like, "What? What are you talking about?" "Oh, the Oscars. Your boy won. The British guy won." And they're like, "Oh, sorry, I don't watch movies. I'm not really a movie buff. I'm not really into the Oscars." How dare you? How dare you not be interested in the Oscars? How dare you not be interested in films? Yeah, I mean, ye won. Right? You guys won. Right? Why aren't you happy about it? You should take pride in your country and your fellow countrymen's accomplishments. It's kind of like patriotism projection. That's kind of how I would describe it. It's like, you ought to be patriotic as well. But I mean, I've got news for you, and I'm sorry, dear listener, if this is
prescribed patriotism.
Yes, indeed. I've got news for you, and I'm sorry, dear listener, if you're bothered by this, but I don't self-identify as a patriot, and I have no interest in patriotism at all. As far as I can tell, patriotism is a completely toxic force that causes nothing but tribalism and conflict. I don't give a shit about patriotism. I don't care. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful to the country of Ireland. I owe my education to the Irish government because I got grants in order to be able to go to university. And I'm very, very fortunate to have been born in a country that afforded me that nicety. But acknowledging...
We also don't get earthquakes, which is something...
which is... Although I won't give the Irish government credit for that.
Oh, fuck no.
They did some very good work in Ireland to prevent those earthquakes. But the point I'm trying to make is that I don't view that... Me being thankful to the government because they did something good for me is not the same as being patriotic. As far as I can tell, patriotism is this kind of weird, unearned pride in somebody's accident of birth. Oh,
that's it.
I was born and reared in Ireland. Aren't I brilliant? No, you didn't earn any of that.
Yeah,
and, I'm a determinist.
Landed you there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a determinist, so nobody really earns anything in some meaningful sense.
No.
But, you definitely don't earn your geography, your location of birth. It's just an accident of genetics, right? That you're alive in the first place. And... yeah, I mean, nothing about your country has anything to do with you, really. And so being just proud of where you're from makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I see sports and the tribalism of, we won. And I see that as a kind of an offshoot of that kind of thinking. And it's just really ridiculous to me. I don't know.
Oh, it's precisely that. I mean, it's like when you look at fucking more, what's the word I'm looking for? When you look at kind of like prehistoric civilizations and that like tribes that went to war on each other and stuff that suddenly decided, well, we're enemies with this tribe. And it's like, why is that? Well, we're from this side of the hill and they're from that side of the hill. So fuck them. We'll go to war with them and we'll fucking murder and butcher one another. And that's plenty good enough reason to do it. And sport is just another manifestation of that. And it's all based off of what I can see just as being like arbitrary skills that are just fucking... who gives a shit? Like,
why are we killing them over there? Well, sure, they look different. I see.
They're from over there. We're from here.
We're from over here, and they're from over there.
What, I mean, what part of this aren't you understanding? Jesus Christ.
Do I have to explain it in more depth?
Yeah.
Stop the lights. That is literally it. Like, you've just explained basically all of human history with one phrase. But they're from over there. Why are we enslaving these people? Because they're from over there, you see.
Yeah.
Because they're not us.
Yeah. We shouldn't, consider them as
equals.
Yeah,
because they're from over there.
Yeah, we shouldn't have the same kind of empathy for them what we would one another. Why not?
Then the servant and then the servant of the house pipes up and says, "But I'm not from over there." But fuck you.
You're up to fuck. Where's the tea?
Oh, fucking hell. Because, it's not even fully rational. It's not that we've only always harmed people over there. Like, the servant of the house might be a woman, for example, and then the next distinction will be, but you're a woman. And I'm a man. Yeah. So there's another dividing line, and that's why you're in a secondary position.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
So long as we can suck any fucking reason out of obscurity to justify being it's fine.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And that's a really easy game to play because none of us are identical. Not even identical twins are identical, for Christ's sake. Why am I the secondary one? Because you were born second, you bastard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's just always going to be something that you can find, and we're all too tribalistic in our thinking. That really is, in some sense, it's our greatest strength, but it's also our greatest weakness. Goodness gracious me.
Yeah, I often kind of think like if and this is pie in the sky territory, but if we didn't have that instinct towards tribalism and say we cross paths with other groups and we just kind of amalgamated into a bigger group and we possess the capacity to work together, as like a unified species, like, fucking what would we have achieved by now? Would we have colonized the stars? Would we fucking, would we have been solved the problem of, sickness, disease, aging, death.
Although there's a very interesting counterpoint, because our tribalism can be a great motivator for ingenuity. So war, for example. War has always been a great driver of medical and technological development, because we need better weapons than the guys over there. We need better medicines and more effective tools than the people over there. And so, in some meaningful sense, tribalism and competition is the driving force of human ingenuity. And so, you could actually, it's very interesting to consider the counterfactual here, but in a counterfactual where the human tribalistic instinct is removed, we might actually still be living in something akin to a prehistoric society. I mean, it could go either way. Now, I'm not entering that as a firm belief of mine. I'm very much thinking on the spot here, but I can definitely see a counterpoint there, and a very interesting potential for it to go sideways.
Yeah.
If we were to remove that instinct. That's what I meant when I said it's our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. You can see it going both ways, you know?
Definitely both, because the same ingenuity gave us the atom bomb, which, you know, could very well be the rock we perish on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in recent times, we've had that whole shit now with fucking Russia invading Ukraine and so on and so forth. Yeah. And that, like, there was a time there, I remember I was over in the UK actually, and it was around last summer, the tail end of last summer, maybe last September. And I remember on the radio, like, the hot topic on the radio was, do we think that this is going to escalate to the use of nuclear weapons, basically?
Terrifying.
Yeah. So, you know, in my lifetime at least, that was the very first time that I ever heard anyone speak about, you know, nuclear weapons being fired, and they were entertaining it as a
legitimate possibility.
Yeah. So, you know, and if that happens, you've got, you know, mutually assured destruction. So, say Russia start firing their nukes, fucking America start firing their nukes. Like, you know, we could very well see the end of modern civilization as we know it. So that ingenuity that was a product of our tribalism could very well be
our undoing. If something like another pandemic, and we won't say the name of that particular one because it'll definitely get this video removed or demonetized or whatever, but if
is that still a thing?
I believe so, but if something like that happens again, but it has a higher kill rate, that could be our undoing. Nuclear proliferation could be our undoing. Some other yet to be identified cause could be our undoing. I mean, if one thing is sure and certain, everything comes to an end. I know of nothing that lasts forever. I know of nothing that survives the test of time. Everything comes to an end eventually. That appears to be something of a rule of our reality. Like, nothing lasts forever. Absolutely nothing. There is no, you know, object on the periodic table of elements that doesn't, you know, rust or degrade or rot or change state. Like, change is the only constant. And so the idea that our civilization is going to last forever is just a completely ludicrous one. Every civilization in the past that was successful came to an end. The Roman Empire fell, you know. Every civilization comes to an end through one way or another. And, you know, while the word civilization wouldn't be the correct word to use here, the dinosaurs met their end via a fucking meteorite. You know, nothing is going to last forever.
Something not least that wasn't their fault at all.
Exactly. Nothing lasts forever, not least our civilization. The only question is when and what will be the cause of it. And I think it's actually a pretty safe bet to posit that we will be our own undoing.
We'll be the architect of our own destruction.
Because we are nothing but evolved chimps. As Christopher Hitchens said many a time, we bear the stamp of our lowly origin. And I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. I mean, all you need to do is look at the nightly news. Just going back to football, look at football hooliganism, right? We just spoke about football more generally, but people literally kill each other because man put ball in net. That literally, like, people literally kill each other because of football. If
all you need to do is go into any pub when these matches are on, and watch all of the orangutans looking at the screen, and then something happens, and it's like, and then fucking the whole place just goes absolutely haywire, and you're like, oh my god, we have no chance.
We have no chance.
Absolutely no hope.
No, we don't have any hope at all. No,
we never had a chance.
No. The sad thing about it is the story started with a foregone catastrophic conclusion. Like, that is inevitable. And we are now chimps who have managed, as you pointed out, to create nuclear and apocalyptic weaponry, and we're now measuring dicks on a global stage. The last nuclear threat that was issued was by Trump, when he was measuring dicks with Kim Jong-un. And Trump said, if I recall correctly, and correct me in the comments below, but he said something along the lines of, in responding to Kim Jong-un's posturing, he said, you will experience and witness a fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. Right? That is very, very scary language to be using in our time when we're talking about nuclear powers, right? And as you pointed out, the most recent example is the Russia-Ukraine situation, and that's terrifying. The thing that frightens me most about that is that Putin doesn't look too healthy. He looks very swollen, and I've seen people hypothesize that he might be suffering from a terminal illness. And if you have a guy who's already quite clearly psychopathic in his tendencies, if you have that guy and he's on his deathbed, why wouldn't he push the red button? But a friend of mine who's more informed on the situation assured me that his generals, who aren't psychopaths, because psychopathy is rare, just by dint of the statistics, they're likely not to be psychopaths, they wouldn't allow it, because they know that they would be living in the nuclear war that followed, right? You know, Putin might be dying, and that's fine for him to push the red button, but if he was sick if he was infirm and sick or whatever, he wouldn't be able to push the red button, or so I've been led to believe by people who are more educated on the topic than I am. But alas, remember, this is handy chat. I cannot stand over anything I've just said. So if you're an expert on the topic, dear listener, jump into the comments below and educate me. I welcome that. But yeah, it's scary, PJ. Scary. I just hope I'm asleep when it happens. I hope I'm asleep in bed with my darling fiance, and we're both having a lovely dream, and then seconds later we will be atomized by a nuclear blast, like the scene in Terminator 2 where somebody just turns into dust because the temperature around their body just makes their body disintegrate. That's fine by me. That seems like it's quick, and I hope it happens while I'm asleep. That'll be fine.
Yeah, it seems like that's the best you can ask for in this reality.
I can think of worse ways to go. I can think of worse. God above. Yeah.
Oh Christ, yeah.
Tune in next week too. And listen to us wax lyrical on the many ways that a person could die painfully.
Yeah, the many ways to go.
The many ways to go.
Christ above.
Oh man. Yeah. Goodness gracious me. I think we've been talking for long enough, actually, for a premiere episode of Handy Chat. I think we've been running over an hour now, if I'm not mistaken. So
Handy Chat that seems to gravitate around fucking misery.
Yeah. It's such as life. This is going to be the way it is with Handy Chat. We'll go wherever the conversation takes us. And I don't know about you, PJ, but I thought this conversation took us in interesting directions. I've certainly enjoyed it. So let's just hope the listeners enjoyed it. And like I said at the opening, or at the outset, dear listener, if you did enjoy this conversation, make sure you smash the like button. It's more important than ever for this video that you do that, so that you send me that signal loud and clear that you enjoyed this conversation, so that I do know whether or not to do another entry in this series. Jump into the comments below and make me aware.
Just like the fucking video, will you? Christ's sake.
Before we all get blown up or something.
Cussy fuck all. Just fucking do it. Christ above in heaven.
Yeah. So, with all that said then, PJ, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, dear listener. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. And as I said, if you liked the video, hit like, comment below, let PJ and I know your thoughts on any of the topics, the very many topics we discussed in this video. And Misery. Above all else, thanks. Misery. And above all else, just I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. So PJ, thanks again for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here. Again, you're a frequent visitor to the channel, and it's always great to hear your dulcet tones on my podcast. So thanks very much.
I'm a more frequent visitor to your channel than I am my own.
I can't even disagree with that. I think that's actually true.
It is. It's actually, in fact, the case.
That is in fact true.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, my listeners will be happier for it, so that suits me down to the ground.
Well, that remains to be seen.
Well, true. Yeah, let's not put the cart before the horse. But anyway, let's leave it there.
Grand.